Everybody. It's the end of the month, so I figure I would show you some of these things I've been working on. The main thing here is the UI. I have updated all these elements. A lot of these elements before were kind of placeholders. They weren't actually doing anything. They were just kind of displaying a number. But yeah, all these work. There's experience, so we can gain levels. And the way that I did this is the person who does the gets the kill gets 100%, and the other one gets half. And yeah, that's pretty much how that is. In Evermore, it's just split evenly. Oh, there's still a bug where the dog thinks these packages are enemies. That's a really easy fix though. But yeah, in Evermore, the experience is split even. But there's actually a problem with that, because in Secret of Evermore, there are parts in the story where the two characters get separated. And during that separation, the hero, keeps leveling up, but the dog just doesn't get any experience, right? So after that point, the dog kind of remains indefinitely behind. Now that kind of matters less and less, because the way that the experience works in that game, and actually in this one as well, is the amount of experience that is required for the dog to level up is a function of how much experience the hero is required to level up. So there's always a relationship between how much experience either one needs. The dog needs a little bit more, essentially, than the hero does. And as levels increase, which I can't really illustrate at this point, but as levels increase, that gap tightens. So it matters less and less, basically, once you get to like late game. In any case, you can level up now. Your stats, level up. They level up differently depending on the character. The dog gets better stat increases because he can't use equipment, so he needs higher stat increases when he levels up. Now the next thing is I finished, more like remade the code to open chests, because it was kind of written in a hard-coded way. It didn't really handle all possibilities. Like this one is an example right here. So there's no room to take what's inside. And you need to account for that, because if you don't, then you would either, when you loot this chest, you would either lose that item, or something in your inventory would get overwritten, and typically you don't want either of those things to happen. Speaking of that, something I learned recently. Did you know that in Chrono Trigger, you have effectively infinite inventory space? It's not technically infinite, because the game's on a cartridge, so it can't be. But there are, I think, about 200 unique items in the game, maybe a little bit more than that. But you have more inventory slots than that. So there will never be a situation where you open a chest and your inventory's full. I just think that's interesting, because, yeah, that's like certainly a way you can handle it. And I don't know, maybe that's like a JRPG thing? Because I think in most Western RPGs, you do have limited space, and like inventory management comes into the gameplay. But I think in JRPGs, you just kind of loot indefinitely. I don't know, maybe there are exceptions to that. But, yeah, I guess it just depends on the type of game that you're making. So as long as I actually have any space, I will be able to pick something up. And, well, that was money, so you're always going to be able to pick that up. So the first thing I do is check if the item is null. That just means it's an empty chest, and I set this bool called item was acquired to true, which kind of seems contradictory and not right, but that'll make sense in a second. Otherwise, if it's not null, and it's greater than or equal to my max item IDs, that means it's an invalid item, because it's gone beyond the list of what items I have in the game, so just get out, basically. Otherwise, if it's at least greater than 0, that means it's a valid item. So I call this getItem function, which tries to place it in your inventory, and it returns whether or not that succeeded. And then otherwise, the only other else case is that if we passed in a negative value for this. And I just treat that as money. That's the way I do it. So if you pass in negative 200, that means you found 200 gold, right? Just to do it all in the same function, so I don't have to kind of handle it in different ways or whatever. Then we go to a dialog box. So this is for, the message that pops up when you open a chest. And this is passing into my, kind of like my cutscene system. This is just like a blank step. Like the player is being told to do nothing. So it's kind of like a pause for like a half a second, essentially. Then we check if an item was acquired. So then we check again if it's null. So this is where this comes into play. So if it's null, we just say empty, and that's it. If it's not empty, then I have to make a string out of the item names using the item ID, and it kind of forms this string, puts it into this buffer, and then the buffer is sent to my event cutscene system, or my dialog. The dialog function and this setup event, I probably should have called this like cutscene step or something like that, but both of these pass data into the same kind of big cutscene array. They're kind of all treated the same. Anyway, that's the message that you get when you find something. Otherwise, if you found money, then we negate the value because it's negative. You don't want to like take away 200. And then these are just safety checks. If you have too much money, then you clamp it, and just kind of a paranoia check right here. If I somehow end up with negative money, then we don't want that to happen. Then again, we have a string display again. And the else case here is if no item was acquired and if no money was acquired, then that means that this function tried to run and it failed. It passed false here. That is when you have no room. And these are already things that I've talked about. And then this last part is the last of it. And this is just to open the chest icon on the map itself. Well, there's a little bit more to it than that, but yeah, we get the map size because we need to check our tile position against our map dimensions to see if it's even in range, just to make sure. Then what I do here is, this is getting the tile ID of that particular tile on the map, and it's making sure that it's a treasure chest icon. You should not do this. This is hard-coded. Okay, my tile sheets are, they're all limited to 256 tiles, just as a way that I decided to do it. And my treasure chests happen to be on these locations, 246 and 238. So I'm just doing a hard-coded magic number check. You're not supposed to do that, but that's what I did. So open sound effect, and then we set the tile ground image to whatever I was before +1. That's because on my tile sheet, my opened version of my chests is one tile to the right of my closed version of the chest, so it just increments it by 1. And now the chest is open. And then if we either found money or we found an item, then, in other words, like we had room to take whatever was in the chest, then we also want to do something else to that tile. We want to take away the event nature of the tile and just turn it into a solid wall. Because I don't want to, you might have a game where if you recheck the treasure chest again after you've opened it, you might want it to say like empty again. Or you might have a game where you can put items back into a chest or something like that. I didn't do that. I'm just like, once you take the chest, it's just turn it into an non-interactable thing. And that's it. Now, something else I do want to say is I do feel like I'm slightly behind. Not catastrophically behind, but not quite as far as I would like to be. I'll just put it that way. I would just like to get this done sooner rather than later. I don't really want to make this into a big thing, more than it already is. I mean, the game itself, I think, will be what it will be. But as far as like documenting the development of this, I don't want to drag this out. I mean, that's the whole point, to try and get it done. You know what I mean? So I'm just going to try and knock this out, and after that, move on to some other, game project, and that'll be that. That's it for now, guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your comments. Appreciate y'all. Take care.